Hello again, and thanks for joining. So today we have an old Lima model to have a look at. It's number 8057 and it represents a South African 5E electric locomotive. Now here in the UK, South African rolling stock is almost impossible to get hold of, so I feel quite lucky to be able to have a look at this one today. Obviously this one is secondhand. This box has got quite a lot of shelf wear on it, a little bit of damage here, possibly from a sticker or price tag in the past. On the back you have this fantastic picture, which going by the haircuts that you can see here is indicative of the age of this model, which I would suspect is around about the 1980s. Now with all older Lima stuff, it's usually pretty rough and the electrics usually are pretty dodgy as well, so I don't hold out a whole lot of hope for this model, but it is quite a rare model, so it's going to be great to have a look at today. So let's get this out and we'll check it out. So this is certainly quite a characterful little locomotive. It's got an interesting paint job and it is also quite unusual. Certainly it's not like anything we see here in the UK or even Europe. So let's start off by having a look at this end of the locomotive. This one is quite slab-sided, it's quite a straight front here. We have a nameplate here which is moulded on a piece of plastic and fixed onto the main body. It's not very well done, I have to admit. It's up to, I guess, Lima's usual standards, but it does have some writing there and a really nice crest on it. The front of this locomotive features the body blue colour and these yellow printed on chevrons and warning stripes. These aren't printed on very well. There is some problem with the paint here where it's kind of bubbled and it's a bit fuzzy around the edges and it doesn't go all the way to the end. So this is very typical of Lima stuff from this era. This looks as though it might have a light up here, and we can check that out later on when we give this a little bit of a run. And down here we have this coupling hanging out the front, typical Lima coupling, and this part here moulded in red plastic and added onto the bogie. There is some nice detail on the moulding, like these little parts here, these jumper cable ports, but you can see that the glazing is nowhere near flush fit. It's got quite a thickness to the edge of the window frame there. You can see straight through, but there isn't any interior detail at all, and what you're seeing in there is just a light bulb, I guess, for the lighting. Looking down the side of this locomotive, it's got this window at the front and a door with some steps coming down. The moulding relief isn't very good on Lima stuff, and that's really evident at this part here. And also the printing just seems to kind of randomly stop for the top chevron, and then these two have some problems with the consistency of the yellow, and they just stop here halfway along the door. As we look further down, this part here is where the chassis is being held onto the body. We've got some grille detail here, which actually is quite nice, with windows beside it. In the middle of the locomotive, we have this transfer, the E444 here, and again, this isn't printed very well. The yellow isn't very consistent there. There's some more grilles, a couple more windows, another part where this model is held together, and then when we get down to this end of the locomotive, again, the yellow chevrons have the same problem with these little speckles in the paint as well, so it's really badly painted, this model. Looking on the roof of the locomotive, we've got some hatches. There's some nice rivet detail in this part here, and this section in the middle with these grills is actually quite nice. It's got some insulators there with wiring going around molded into the main body of the plastic. It actually looks not too bad up here, and we have a couple of pantographs. This one has got rusty pantographs, I guess because of the age, but they still work okay, and they're sprung loaded and they look quite fine as well. So certainly the pantographs on this locomotive really shine through. It's a nice part that's really in contrast with the moulding of the main body and certainly the finish. On both the pantographs, not only is the runner at the top gone rusty, but also the springs, which means this doesn't actually fit down very well. It's a bit tricky to get that to fit there. There we go. So looking down below the body, we have these bogies here. Both of them are the same type of moulding where they've got quite a lot of detail actually. The relief on the springs is really good. And we've got some brake blocks here which are really quite nicely detailed but nowhere near line with the tread. And the wheels on this model are quite deep as well, they're quite thick, and they have these pronounced flanges on them as well. So if you've got fine track on your model railway layout, this is going to really struggle. This bogie is a pickup bogie, the other one is driven. You can see the gearing on it here, so I'm going to make the assumption that the motor is just sitting on top of this bogie. The part in the middle has got some detail moulded into it, which is quite nice, and it also has the Lima Italy logo there. There's no side detail on that, but that actually might be prototypical. So it is a very interesting prototype, this locomotive, but this rendition of it really isn't that good, I think. It's got some good and some bad, and some ugly as well. Well, I think we should probably give this a go. I'm not holding out much hope for it. Lima models from this age need a bit of work to get going, but we'll give this a try and see what happens. Okay, we've got it on the test track here. Let's give it some power and see what happens. Well, wasn't that surprising? I didn't actually think it would go that well, but it actually runs pretty good. It's massively high geared though, so it runs really quickly with just a bit of power. And I noticed that the lighting, while it works on both directions, it needs a lot of power for that bulb to fire up. So therefore, this is going to be running along at a fair old pace to get the most out of it. I think we should open this up and let's have a look at the mechanism. So I'm going to make the assumption that these little tabs here are the only thing that's holding the body to the chassis. So let's just prise this apart and see what happens. So here is the chassis, and it's very typical of Lima models of this era. The front bogie is held on here with this little stud, and this U-shaped piece of metal is just holding it on here. And we have some additional wiring up here, which is fantastically crude, I think, but looks really quite cool. It's got wires coming to the front here where it has this little bulb hanging here. It has a weight in the middle, not a very big one. And here we have the motor and all this crazy wiring as well around it. But it is actually quite a simple thing. It's just one of these kind of pancake motors, very much like the Hornby Ringfield ones. Usually these don't run very well, but this one seems to be running pretty good. And again, we have another bulb at this end of the locomotive. Here we have the gearbox on the back of the motor. And unlike Ringfield motors, which have an extra set of gear wheels in here and slow down the mechanism a little bit, this doesn't have that, and hence it's so high geared and it really runs along quite quickly. So it's quite a simple setup here, but it seems to work okay. Let's get this back together and then we can put it on the scales and see how much it weighs. So this model comes in at 206 grams. So this 5E South African electric locomotive from Lima has been quite an interesting and characterful thing to have a look at today. It's very different from prototypes of electric locomotives that you see here in the UK and Europe, and South African railway items are few and far between. So it was a brave move for Lima to produce this model, but I'm actually really happy that they did. It's very typical of Lima models of that era in that it's a bit crude and a bit toy-like, but its appeal is in its simplicity, and it would probably come in at a low price point as well. So this would be a great model if you're interested in just starting out and looking to have something which is easy to service and you can have a bit of fun with. But also if you're thinking of modelling South African railways, you don't have much choice, I think, in terms of what you can actually get. So this might be your only choice. So I think if you get this model, you're going to have some pluses and some minuses. And perhaps the best part of this model is its character, not only in the way it looks, but also in the way that it's going to run, and it's probably going to cause you some problems, and it's probably going to give you a lot of smiles as well. I'm not a big fan of Lima because I think their stuff is a bit toy-like, but just for a bit of fun on your layout, this could be the perfect locomotive for you. So let me know what you think about my analysis in the comments below. I'd love to know what you think about this model, and if you liked this video, please give it a thumbs up. It really helps this channel grow. I'll put this on the turntable so you can see all the way around, but that's it for today. Thanks for watching. See ya.